This is Duke University.
My experience in TriSector came most recently when I was actually sitting in the federal government. Having an opportunity to be a part of the administration and putting out the first set of dollars for Pay for Success was quite interesting because it was managing, with all due respect, a set of government folks who were very much around compliance and legislation and timeliness and protocol versus grantees who are mostly not-for-profits who are going to be leading in these interventions saying, well, wait. If I say yes to that, then what does that mean to the investment community? And I think there has been a history, particularly in the United States, where people have assumed that the public sector would be the ongoing, sustaining supporter of social problems. And this is actually a much higher stake because the government's saying we're going to support it if we're successful. So the good thing is we've raised the bar, but we haven't necessarily adjusted all of the regulatory and compliance pieces to really create that flexibility to have honest conversations of, if you're really going to reduce recidivism, it may actually take longer than we decided. We may have to readjust what those percentages are. We may have to revisit what the set of interventions are. So I think it was the first time to be able to sit inside the federal government, have an investor's perspective from my time of being an investor, have an NGO's perspective, understanding this was probably one of 25 other programs they were running, and how do they manage that while still meeting the match requirement. So it was interesting to be able to sit at the table and have, I would say, very robust conversations, but very much dialogue and discourse around how this was going to work. And if the government wanted to shift from just a compliance officer to an enabler, they were going to have to make some adjustments, both in how they spoke with folks and what their expectations were in terms of performance. Part of managing this kind of multilingual opportunity we have was one, and we hear it oftentimes from some of our more successful CEOs, is about just being compassionate and listening. I think oftentimes when we sit in these roles within this TriSector world, we sit in that role. We are unable to place ourselves somewhere else. So I'd say the first thing is just walking in and being completely open and recognizing I have a set of goals, but so do they, and so do they. And if I don't get mine and they get theirs, I've lost, and vice versa. So again, how do you create that win-win? I think the second thing is being overly conscious and sometimes overly annoying about really defining and having a conversation that's not transactional and saying, well, I'm saying ROI, that's what it means to me. What does it mean to you? I'm saying community, how do you define community? I'm saying impact, what impacts are important to you? So I would say that there's a much higher level of intentionality and understanding and listening in conversations that, let's be clear, it takes people years to be able to master, but it is something that we need to work on. I think there's such a privileged opportunity for MBA students to take risks that oftentimes they don't. Now being a professor, I think we oftentimes create this false sense of success, and that it is this kind of linear trajectory of this job, this brand, that brand, and there it is. And I would love for us to flip the script and say, while you're in school, take as many risks as possible. Go work places where you're not comfortable. Go work places you have no experience. And I recognize that's oversimplified and there's challenges to that. But I think the only way you're going to know is if you're able to put yourself in other people's shoes. And so when students take on consulting projects, really spend time not just focused on the deliverable, but what is the process for them and for the people participating in that project. If there's an opportunity, maybe not to work in the government, but figure out how to shadow someone in the government, or how to just spend time really understanding the role of policy and how that gets framed and how that, again, can either enable or stifle productivity or effectiveness. So I would say while you're a student, take advantage of not just going to hear people, but following up and having informational interviews and really understanding how it works, and then working in places that you probably have never worked or will never work, but you at least carry that knowledge and understanding of how they may very well be part of the ecosystem you ultimately end up in. The challenge is that we have not done a good job of explaining that this is a balance between head and heart. And so I think I want to make sure that there is not an oversimplification of just solving community problems, but it still requires the rigor of hardcore financial analysis. It requires the understanding of organizational behavior, probably at even a higher level, because you're dealing with such a multitude of stakeholders with very different backgrounds and very different intentions. And so I think I would say my hope is that we do not lose or oversimplify this having a social impact without making sure there is real mastery in some of the core functions of management and finance and accounting and organizational behavior and leadership.